Salutations, YouTube, and welcome back to the I think it's fifth? Yeah, fifth consecutive week of me uploading. I'm going to reach some sort of record here. I'm sorry if my voice sounds a bit off, I'm currently dealing with a bit of a cold. So I'll try my best to, not do the noises. I'm sorry if that cringed you out, but, a bit of a weird one today. I've got the stories lined up, but one of them is a bit long. When I say long, I mean longer than every other story I've told on here. So consider this like a bonus episode, like one full story and then two short ones. Excuse me, that was a fart. Yeah, before we start though, get yourself a drink, get yourself a snack, make yourself comfortable. Let me know what you're eating and drinking in the comments. I'm drinking, I'll give you one guess. So let's begin. This story is called Death at 423 Stockholm Street. We've always lived at this is in the author's perspective. So we've always lived at 423 Stockholm Street, so there wasn't really ever a time that I didn't hear the creature. He'd been living in the room on the other side of my wall since I was born. When I was a very young child, I thought he was my friend. I would knock and he would bang back. I would giggle and he would mumble words to me that I couldn't understand. I thought he was there to protect me from my nightmares, but as I got older, I started to be afraid. My parents insisted that there wasn't a room on the other side of my wall. Over time, I realised that he wasn't my friend at all. That's when the scratching, moaning and sporadic banging began to scare me. When I was 8, I finally broke down and told my parents about the creature in my wall. I was terrified that he would come into my room one night and kill me. My mother rolled her eyes and told me it was mice. She never listened to me anyway. My father agreed with her that it was animals, but he hugged me and told me he would protect me and not to be scared. Sorry. From then on, whenever I'd hear the noises, I would scream for my father and he would come running into my room less than a minute later to see what the matter was. I would point at the wall and cower. My dad would smile, bang on the wall with his fist and say, "Quiet down in there, or else." The noise would stop. I'd give my dad a teary smile and he would hug me. He was always my protector. I miss him so much now. As I matured into a teenager, I started inviting my friends to sleep over. They didn't believe my stories at first, but after one night in my room, they were convinced. We called ourselves the Stockholm Street Ghostbusters, and we spent hours trying to exorcise the entity, a demon according to our research, through awkward seances and Ouija boards. Let me ask you lot this. Would you guys fuck with a Ouija board? And if you didn't believe in the supernatural demons and shit, would you still fuck with a Ouija board? Let me know. We decided that the scratching must be the creature etching satanic sigils and drawings onto the other side of my wall. One slumber party, running on heightened bravado and caffeine, I waited until the familiar scratching started and I pounded on the wall just like my dad. "Quiet down in there, or else. You're already dead. The living are trying to sleep." We giggled and my friends were impressed. For a moment, but now I know I should not have known to provoke him. Suddenly, there was an answering, enraged banging on my wall, louder than I'd ever heard, and a sort of angry yelling. We all screamed and hid in the closet, yelling for my dad. When he came running, my friends begged him to take them home. I was left alone while they were gone. I could feel him, almost see him, impatiently pacing behind the wall, back and forth. 5 inches of wooden wallpaper between he and I. I was so scared that I stayed hidden in the closet. Then the scratching started again. That was when I realised what it was doing. It was trying to carve its way through the wall and into my bedroom. I whimpered at the thought, and then the scratching stopped and the banging resumed on the walls. It didn't stop again until the headlights of my dad's car lit up my room. I cried until my dad, always the hero, came sprinting into my room and banged on the wall. "It's still in the walls, Dad," I wailed. He nodded, gave me a pitying look and pounded his fist on the demon's wall. "Quiet down in there, or else." Then he held me, let me cry out my fears, and told me it was okay if I slept on the sofa that night. Sometimes I thought he believed it was all in my head, but it wasn't. The murmurs, the knocking and the scratching. I'd been hearing it all my life. It was real, but if he didn't believe, he never let on and never made me feel crazy. He just played along. I guess I never really understood my dad. One night when I was 16, I was awoken by an otherworldly, ear-splitting scream. It was so loud, so high and so piercing that I screamed as well in terror. The scream ended abruptly, and then a moment later my dad came running in. "You heard it! How could you not hear it? You had to have heard it!" I cried as my body racked with sobs. "Oh, sweetie." My dad sat at the end of my bed, his hair dishevelled and a far-off look in his middle-of-the-night bloodshot eyes. "Of course I heard it, but it was just an owl, I'm sure of it. We've been seeing a few in the neighbourhood." "No, Dad, listen to the walls." "Lindsay, please, Dad." He sighed but nodded, and we sat and listened for a while. I needed my dad to know the truth and to finally believe me. We were all in danger, but no more sounds came from the wall that night. I didn't hear him again after that, not for a long time. Excuse me. The wall suddenly felt empty to me for the first time in my life. Maybe it was dormant, or maybe it had been called back to hell. But either way, I knew it would be back. Oddly, when the creature did return, I didn't really notice at first. After 16 years, it was simply white noise to me. A background soundtrack as familiar to me as my own face. It took so long for me to process that it was back that I couldn't put my finger on when it actually started. I think that's what sealed our fates in the end. The noises were just so inherent to me that I failed to understand how unusual they really were and what had been all along. When I finally did realise what I was hearing, I'm ashamed to say I almost felt relieved. The haunt progressed in the same cycle it had all my life. First the groans, then the banging, then the light, lazy tapping, and finally the scratching, always the scratching. I told my dad about the scratching and about how I thought the creature was trying to rip through the wall and into my room. My dad laughed and told me there were 3 inches of solid metal on the other side of my wall and that nothing, not mice, raccoons, feral cats or even ghosts could come through my wall. And he should know. He built the house himself. And besides, he assured me he would always be there to protect me. But in the end, he wasn't. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen next. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Let me know what you think happens. Since I was moving out in a year, I decided I had no choice but to stick it out. After 16 years with him, what was 12 more months? I grew unconcerned, lazy and complacent. I ignored the noises, even started to bang back again. I used logic to pacify my fear, whatever it was. It couldn't come through the wall. If it could, it would have done so years ago. I sensed that more than anything else in the world, it wanted out. And since it was still in there, obviously it was trapped. and I was right. The night the door was opened is the most vivid memory I have. I was at a friend's house when my mother called me and told me to come home immediately. This in itself was strange, as my mother barely even acknowledged me and never ever called me. I drove the 5 miles back to my neighbourhood, but I had a hard time getting in. I started to panic as I desperately weaved through all the media vans, police cars and SWAT trucks. I had to park and walk the final 3 blocks to my house, tears rolling down my cheeks as I realised that my street was at the epicentre of it all, because I had knew. As soon as I saw my house, I realised it. My dad must be dead. It had finally gotten out and it had killed my dad. I took off at a dead run, then ignoring all the voices yelling at me to stop. I dodged in between the people, the vehicles, pushing past dozens of people, ran through the crime scene tape and directly into my house. And there it was. I crossed from the living room next to my bedroom. The hall closet stood with its door open. All the jackets and sweaters had been pulled out of it, and on the back wall I saw it. Another door. For whatever reason, no one stopped me. I stumbled into the closet through the hidden door and out into the room I'd always known was there, but it wasn't what I thought it'd be. The media called my dad the Skinner of Stockholm Street, and from what I saw in that room, it was a very fitting name. There were knives, all sorts, and there were metal devices stacked along one wall, at least 100 of them. Most I didn't recognise, but a few I had seen in history books. There were 4 sets of manacles, a wall of chains and rolls of duct tape. In the middle of the room, there was a flat table which was very clearly soaked in blood. A tall stool sat at the head of the table. But the worst of it was the wall, my wall. Every inch of it was covered in carvings, but the carvings weren't satanic or evil like I thought. The carvings were words. The carvings said, "Jacob, I love you," by Diana Hobb. "Tell my father I forgive him," by Brian Woodlin. "Tara, I'm so sorry," by Michael McNulty. "Tell my daughters they were my world," by Angela Waterstone. According to the evidence file, there were over 60 of these messages, and I made myself read every single one. They haunt me every night. I had spent 10 years tormenting them, and now they would forever torment me. I live in a hospital now, and I could still hear the scratching. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it. I haven't really slept in a year. My doctor says if I don't sleep soon, I'll die. I spend my days watching news coverage of my father's trial, and I spend my nights staring at the walls. The drugs don't work, but they keep giving them to me anyway. And though I try every night, I can never fall asleep. I always hear the scratching, and I always will. What do you think of that one? Told you it was a long story, but I also told you it was a good one. I first heard that story on a YouTube channel called Snarled. They do this series of videos called Something Scary. Go check them out. It's spelled SNARLED. Some good videos on there. The second one is about a babysitter. Before I do that, I'm gonna have a bit of a drink because my mouth is now dry. Excuse me. Right, second story. A young couple living in a large isolated house had gone out to a dinner party one evening and left the babysitter in charge of their 2 children. The children had been put to bed and the babysitter was watching the television when the phone rang. She answered, but all she heard was a man laughing hysterically, and then a voice saying, "I'm upstairs with the children, you'd better come up." Thinking it was one of those phone calls or a practical joke, she slammed down the receiver and turned the television sound up. A short time later, the phone rang again, and as she picked it up, the unmistakable hysterical laughter came down the line, and the voice once again said, "I'm upstairs with the children, you'd better come up." Getting rather frightened, she called the operator and was advised they would notify the police, and should he phone again, could she keep him talking in order to give them time to trace the call and have him arrested. Minutes after she replaced the receiver, the phone rang again, and when the voice said, "I'm upstairs with the children, you better come up," she tried to keep him talking. However, he must have guessed what she was trying to do and put the phone down. Only seconds later, the phone rang again. This time it was the operator who said, "Get out of the house now. The man is on the extension." The babysitter put down the phone and just then heard someone running down the stairs. She fled from the house and ran straight into the arms of the police. They burst into the house and found a man brandishing a large butcher's knife. He had entered through an upstairs window, murdered both the children, and was just about to do the same thing to the babysitter. Bit of a dark one, that, because it involves the death of kids. This last one is a popular urban legend. I won't keep it too long because we're almost 20 minutes into the video. So, last one. One night, a woman went out for drinks with her girlfriends. She left the bar fairly late at night, got in her car and onto the deserted highway. After a few miles, she noticed she was low on gas and pulled into a gas station. She was frightened by the odd behaviour of the attendant, who kept trying to get her to leave the car and join him in the office. She refused and drove off as fast as she could. As she drove, she noticed a lone pair of headlights in her rearview mirror approaching fast. As the car pulled up behind her, dangerously close to her tailgate, he flashed his brights. Now she was getting nervous. The car behind her kept flashing the lights off and on, and the driver seemed to be shouting and making signs with his hands. Through every stoplight and turn, it followed her until she reached home and pulled into her driveway. Terrified, she made a mad dash into her house and called the police. As she ran from the car, so did the driver of the car behind her, and he screamed, "Lock the door and call the police." When the police arrived, the horrible truth was finally revealed to the woman. The man in the car had been trying to save her. As he pulled up behind her and his headlights illuminated her car, he saw the silhouette of a man with an axe rising up from the back seat behind her, so he flashed his brights to warn her. The police arrested the crazed killer in the back seat, who turned out to be an escaped mental patient. It was an extremely scary night, and the woman had a lucky escape. Now, if she's driving and someone's in the back seat, surely you'd be able to see it in your rearview mirror. That's the only gripe I've got about that story. But nevertheless, that's all 3 stories done. Let me know which one your favourite one was. I'm sorry the last 2 were a bit short. I didn't want to make this video drag because the first story was pretty long, like I said. It was last minute research. I apologise. I've just been very busy this last week. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought. I'd love to read your feedback in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos, and until then, peace.